Black chef wins cooking contest. Judges stunned by secret ingredient. The aroma of caramelized onions and seared meat filled the air as the judges approached Marcus Johnson's station. The tall, dark-skinned chef stood with perfect posture, his hands clasped behind his back, face betraying no emotion. On the pristine white plate before him sat what appeared to be a simple dish, braised short ribs with a glistening sauce, accompanied by root vegetables arranged with artistic precision. Judge Alina Westfield, the renowned food critic whose approval could make or break careers, lifted her fork with manicured fingers. The other judges watched her closely. Alina was known for her brutal honesty and refined palate. The entire auditorium fell silent. "What exactly am I tasting here, Mr. Johnson?" Alina asked after a long moment, her voice carrying through the space. Her expression remained unreadable, but something in her tone had shifted. Marcus met her gaze directly. "Grandmother's recipe," he said simply, "with a few modifications." Alina placed her fork down deliberately. "This tastes like," she paused, seeming to search for words, "like memory, like something I've never had before, yet somehow reminds me of childhood." The other judges murmured in agreement as they tasted. The head judge, Chef Anton Bernard, looked up at Marcus with narrowed eyes. "There's something in this sauce, something I can't quite identify." Marcus nodded once. "Yes, sir, there is." "And you're not going to tell us what it is?" Chef Bernard pressed. "With respect, sir, that's my secret ingredient." Marcus stood firm, even as whispers rippled through the crowd of spectators and competitors. Alina leaned forward. "Well, whatever it is, it's extraordinary, but I have to wonder, is this really fine dining, or is this just home cooking dressed up to look fancy?" The question hung in the air, weighted with implications that went far beyond food. Marcus felt the eyes of everyone in the room on him, waiting for his response. In that moment, he faced a choice: defend his culinary heritage or adapt to the expectations of the elite culinary world he'd fought so hard to enter. And in that moment, everything he'd ever believed about food, about his identity, and about success was suddenly called into question. 6 months earlier, Marcus Johnson wiped down the counters of his small neighborhood restaurant, Roots, for the final time. The modest establishment had been his dream for 5 years, a place where he could showcase elevated versions of the soul food he'd grown up eating in his grandmother's kitchen in South Carolina. But dreams didn't pay the mounting bills or the increasingly expensive Atlanta rent. "You sure about this, Marcus?" Dion, his sous chef and oldest friend, asked as he stacked chairs on tables. "We could try one more month. Maybe that food blogger's review will bring in some new customers." Marcus shook his head, the weight of failure heavy on his shoulders. "We're already 3 months behind on rent, I'm not going to drag you down with me." "So what now?" Dion asked, leaning against the counter that had seen countless hours of preparation, innovation, and passion. Marcus pulled an envelope from his back pocket and slid it across the counter. Dion opened it, his eyes widening as he read. "The National Culinary Championship? Man, you never mentioned this." "I didn't think I'd get in," Marcus admitted. "But they accepted my application. Grand prize is $100,000 and a feature in Gourmet Quarterly. That could be a fresh start." "For real, that's the competition where all those fancy French-trained chefs show off, right? The one that's been won by a white dude in a tall hat for like 10 years straight." Marcus nodded. 15 years, actually. "And you think you've got a shot?" Marcus looked around the empty restaurant, at the space that had held his dreams, at the walls decorated with black and white photos of his grandmother cooking, of his mother's hands rolling out biscuit dough. "I don't know," he answered honestly, "but Grandma Ida always said our food was as good as anything those fancy restaurants serve. I just need to make the judges see that." Dion studied his friend's face. "You know what they'll say, that soul food isn't refined enough." "That's why I'm not cooking soul food," Marcus said. "Not exactly. I'm going to take their techniques, their presentation, but the flavor." He smiled slightly. "The flavor is going to be all Grandma Ida." The next morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with notebooks spread out before him, scribbling ideas, crossing them out, starting again. His small apartment was a far cry from the professional kitchen he'd just lost, but it was quiet and allowed him to think. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Heard about the restaurant. You coming home?" Marcus stared at the message. Going back to Charleston would feel like the ultimate admission of failure. His mother had warned him about opening a restaurant, had told him to stick with his secure job as a line cook at one of Atlanta's high-end steakhouses, but he'd been determined to create something of his own. "Not yet, asterisk," he texted back. "Got something in the works. Another restaurant." Came the immediate reply, "Something different. Tell you soon." He set the phone down and returned to his notes. The competition would require 3 dishes, an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. Each needed to showcase technique, creativity, and flavor. Each needed to impress some of the most discerning palates in the country. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the smells and tastes of his grandmother's kitchen. The way she never measured anything but somehow created perfect dishes every time. The way she'd slap his hand when he tried to sneak a taste before dinner was ready. The way she'd say, "Food ain't just about eating, child, it's about remembering." His eyes snapped open. That was it, memory. He would create dishes that evoked memory, that told his story, but using the techniques and presentation expected in fine dining. 3 weeks later, Marcus arrived in Chicago for the competition. The hotel hosting the event was grand, with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Chefs from across the country milled about, many already in their whites, networking and sizing up the competition. Marcus checked in and received his competitor's packet, feeling conspicuously out of place in his jeans and t-shirt. As he turned to find his room, he bumped into a woman who was walking briskly while reading something on her phone. "Sorry," they both said simultaneously. Looked up and Marcus found himself face to face with a woman about his age, with copper-colored hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and sharp green eyes. She wore chef's whites with the name Sophia Taylor embroidered on the breast. "You're a competitor?" she asked, glancing at the packet in his hand. "Marcus Johnson," he said, extending his hand. "Just got in from Atlanta." Sophia Taylor, San Francisco. Her handshake was firm, professional. "First time," Marcus nodded. "Me too," she admitted. "Though I've been preparing for this for basically my entire career. My mentor was a finalist 3 years ago." "Impressive," Marcus said, genuinely meaning it. "What about you?" she asked. "Who did you train under?" The question highlighted the difference in their paths. While Sophia had clearly followed the traditional route, culinary school, apprenticeships under renowned chefs, Marcus's training had been much less conventional. "My grandmother, mostly," he said honestly. "Then some time in kitchens around Atlanta." Something flickered across Sophia's face, surprise, perhaps skepticism. "Well," she said after a moment, "that's unique. Good luck tomorrow." As she walked away, Marcus couldn't help but feel that his answer had somehow diminished him in her eyes. It was a feeling he'd become accustomed to in professional kitchens, where his lack of formal training often translated to assumptions about his skills and knowledge. But Grandma Ida had taught him things no culinary school could: how to cook with intuition, how to layer flavors that spoke to the soul, how to make food that wasn't just consumed but experienced. Tomorrow, he would show what those lessons were worth. The preliminary round began early the next morning. 50 chefs competed to create an appetizer in 1 hour, with the top 20 advancing to the next round. Marcus's station was between a stern-looking older man from New Orleans and Sophia from the hotel lobby. "Competitors, your mystery ingredient is..." The head judge, Chef Anton Bernard, paused dramatically as servers uncovered baskets at each station. "Sea urchin," murmurs rippled through the competitors. Sea urchin uni was a delicacy prized for its creamy texture and briny flavor. It was also an ingredient Marcus had worked with exactly twice in his life. He took a deep breath, remembering his strategy. He didn't need to create the most innovative dish. He just needed to make the judges feel something. As Marcus began to work, he noticed Sophia confidently preparing what looked like a sea urchin custard with caviar. The chef on his other side was creating some kind of foam. All around him, competitors were employing techniques straight out of modernist cuisine textbooks. Marcus, meanwhile, thought of the creamy grits his grandmother made, how the texture wasn't so different from the sea urchin. He began to prepare a small portion of grits, enriched with butter and cream. When they were almost done, he carefully folded in the sea urchin, allowing it to melt slightly into the grits. He added a touch of lemon zest and a small amount of a spice blend his grandmother had taught him, a family secret that added depth without overwhelming other flavors. For presentation, he placed the grits in a small, wide bowl, creating a well in the center where he added one perfect lobe of sea urchin, a few small cubes of crisp bacon, and microgreens. The dish was simple compared to what his competitors were creating, but as he stepped back to look at his work, he felt confident in his choice. When the judges reached his station, they examined the dish with curious expressions. "Grits?" asked Alina Westfield, raising an eyebrow. "Sea urchin-infused grits with crispy bacon and preserved lemon," Marcus explained. The judges tasted silently. Marcus watched their faces, looking for any reaction. Chef Bernard's expression remained neutral, but Alina closed her eyes briefly as she tasted. "The texture is remarkable," she said finally. "The sea urchin and grits complement each other beautifully, and there's something else. A spice blend." "Family recipe," Marcus said. "Interesting choice," Chef Bernard commented. "Not what I would expect in a competition like this, but Effective. They moved on without further comment. Marcus exhaled slowly. Not effusive praise, but not dismissal either. He'd have to wait and see if it was enough to advance. 2 hours later, the results were announced. Marcus heard his name called among the 20 advancing to the next round. Sophia also advanced, as did about half of the chefs who had been working near him. "Congratulations," Sophia said to him as they left the competition area. "The grits were a bold choice." "Thanks," Marcus replied. "Your custard looked amazing. It's a dish I've been perfecting for years," she said. "My mentor taught me the base technique." "Well, it worked. We both made it through." Sophia nodded. "See you tomorrow for the main course round." As Marcus walked back to his hotel room, his phone rang. It was Dion. "Yo, I just saw the results online. You made it through." Marcus couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, man, 1 round down. What you make? Something fancy?" "Grits." There was a pause, then Dion burst out laughing. "You served those uppity judges grits, man. I wish I could have seen their faces." "With sea urchin," Marcus clarified, chuckling. "But yeah, basically grits. That's what I'm talking about, bringing a taste of home to those people. Grandma Ida would be proud." The mention of his grandmother sobered Marcus. "I hope so. 2 more rounds to go, though." "You got this. Just keep cooking your food. Not what you think they want, what you know is good." After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of his hotel bed, thinking about Dion's words. His food. What did that even mean anymore? The restaurant he'd poured his heart into had failed. Maybe what he thought was good wasn't what customers or judges actually wanted. For the main course round the next day, he'd planned to make a refined version of his grandmother's braised short ribs. But now, looking at the competition he'd faced, the foams, the custards, the technical prowess, he wondered if he should change his approach. He opened his notebook and began to sketch a new dish, one that incorporated more of the techniques he'd seen today. Something that might impress judges like Chef Bernard, who clearly valued innovation and technical skill. But as he worked, he found himself returning to the flavors and methods he knew best. The secret spice blend, the slow braising technique, the careful attention to how ingredients work together to create something greater than their parts. Maybe Dion was right. Maybe his best chance wasn't trying to cook like everyone else, but cooking the food that told his story. The main course round the following day reduced the field from 20 to 10 finalists. The mystery basket contained short ribs, a stroke of luck for Marcus, who had been planning a short rib dish all along. As the 3-hour cooking time began, Marcus settled into a rhythm. He seared the short ribs to develop a deep crust, then prepared a braising liquid with red wine, aromatics, and crucially, a small amount of the spice blend his grandmother had passed down to him. The recipe had originated with his great-great-grandmother, who had been born into slavery and had created flavors from whatever limited ingredients were available to her. While the short ribs braised, Marcus prepared root vegetables, carrots, parsnips, and turnips, cutting them with precision and cooking them separately to ensure each reached perfect tenderness. He reduced the braising liquid to create a glossy sauce, adding a touch of bitter chocolate to deepen the flavor. As he worked, he noticed Sophia at the next station preparing what looked like a sous vide short rib with a complex garnish of foraged mushrooms and edible flowers. Her movements were efficient, her technique flawless. When time was called, Marcus plated his dish with care. The short rib sat atop a puree of root vegetables, the sauce drizzled precisely around the plate, the vegetables arranged with attention to color and height. It was simple compared to many of the other dishes being presented, but it was executed perfectly. The judges tasted in silence. Eleanor Westfield closed her eyes again as she tasted the sauce, a slight furrow appearing between her brows. "This sauce," she said, opening her eyes to look at Marcus. "It's remarkable. There's something in it I can't quite place." "Thank you," Marcus replied. "It's a family recipe." "Is this African cuisine?" Chef Bernard asked, his tone neutral but his implication clear. Marcus felt a flicker of irritation but kept his expression professional. "It's American cuisine, sir. The recipe has been in my family for generations." Chef Bernard nodded slightly, making a note on his clipboard before moving on to the next station. After all the dishes had been tasted, the judges deliberated for over an hour. When they returned, Chef Bernard announced the 10 finalists who would compete in the final dessert round the next day. "Marcus Johnson," he called, and Marcus felt a rush of relief and pride. "Sophia Taylor," was announced shortly after. As the competitors dispersed, Sophia approached Marcus. "Congratulations again," she said. "Your short rib was beautiful." "Thanks," Marcus replied. "Your dish looked incredible too. The sauce on your short rib, what was in it? I couldn't quite identify the flavor profile." Marcus smiled slightly. "Family secret. My grandmother would haunt me if I shared it." Sophia laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. Fair enough, my family doesn't have any culinary secrets, they can barely cook. That's why I went to culinary school as soon as I could. Where did you train? Marcus asked. Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, then under Chef Mitchell Laurent at Etoile in San Francisco. The names carried weight in the culinary world. Chef Laurent had 3 Michelin stars and was known for his perfectionism. Impressive, Marcus said sincerely. What about you? Sophia asked. You mentioned your grandmother, but did you work in any notable kitchens? There it was again, the assumption that his training must have followed the traditional path to be valid. I was head chef at my own restaurant until recently, Marcus said. Before that, I worked at several places in Atlanta, the Capitol Grill, South City Kitchen, a few others. Your own restaurant, what happened to it? Marcus hesitated. It closed, couldn't make the numbers work. Something like sympathy flickered across Sophia's face. I'm sorry, that's rough. Yeah, well, that's why I'm here, trying to start fresh. What was your restaurant called? Roots. It was soul food, but... He searched for the right words. Elevated, I guess you could say, though I always hated using that term. Why? Sophia asked, seeming genuinely curious. Because it implies the original isn't good enough on its own, like my grandmother's cooking needs to be elevated to be worthy of respect. Sophia considered this. I never thought about it that way, but I get it. She paused. So tomorrow, dessert round, ready? As I'll ever be, Marcus replied. You. Dessert's actually my weakness, she admitted. I'm more of a savory chef. Well, good luck anyway. You too, Marcus. She hesitated, then added, whatever happens tomorrow, your food tells a story, that's something special. The final round dessert would determine the champion. As Marcus prepared his station early the next morning, he felt a strange calm. He had made it to the final 10 out of 50 competitors. Whatever happened now, he had proven something to himself. The mystery ingredient for the dessert round was announced. Sweet potatoes. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Sweet potato pie was a staple at every holiday meal his family had ever shared. His grandmother's version was legendary in their community. But a traditional sweet potato pie wouldn't showcase the technical skills the judges were looking for. Instead, Marcus decided to deconstruct the concept, a sweet potato custard, a crumble made from pie crust, candied pecans, and a bourbon caramel sauce. As he worked, he noticed Sophia struggling slightly with her dessert, which appeared to be a sweet potato soufflé. Her usually confident movements seemed hesitant. Marcus focused on his own work, carefully preparing each component. The custard was infused with the same secret spice blend, though in a much smaller quantity, just enough to add depth and complexity without overwhelming the sweet potato. When the judges reached his station, they examined the beautifully plated dessert with interest. A deconstructed sweet potato pie? Elinor asked. Yes, Marcus confirmed, with bourbon caramel and spiced pecans. The judges tasted, and for the first time, Marcus saw Chef Bernard's expression change. Stern Chef looked up with surprise. The spice blend again, he noted. It works remarkably well here, brings everything together. Indeed, Elinor agreed. There's something almost nostalgic about this flavor. It reminds me of holidays of comfort, but elevated to a new level. They moved on to Sophia's station, where her soufflé had fallen slightly. Marcus could see the disappointment on her face as she presented her dish. After tasting all 10 desserts, the judges retired to deliberate. The competitors and audience waited tensely for nearly 2 hours before they returned. Chef Bernard approached the microphone. This competition has showcased extraordinary talent and creativity. The decision was difficult, but we have reached a consensus. He paused, looking out at the audience. In third place, Sophia Taylor. Sophia stepped forward to accept her bronze medal, her expression a mixture of pride and disappointment. In second place, Chef Bernard continued, James Whitaker. A tall chef from Seattle accepted the silver medal. And the winner of this year's National Culinary Championship with a prize of $100,000 and a feature in Gourmet Quarterly. Marcus Johnson. The room erupted in applause as Marcus stood in shock. He had won. His food, his grandmother's legacy, had won. As he stepped forward to accept the gold medal, he caught sight of Sophia applauding, a genuine smile on her face. Chef Bernard shook his hand. Congratulations, Chef Johnson. Your dishes showed technical skill, creativity, and something more soul. We would be honored if you would share your recipes with our readers in the magazine feature. And that was when Marcus faced his first real dilemma as champion. The secret spice blend had been a family secret for generations. His grandmother had made him promise never to share it outside the family. It was one of the few things they had that was truly their own, passed down through years when so much else had been taken. I'm honored, Marcus said carefully, though there is one component I hope you'll understand I need to keep private. The spice blend is a family heritage. Chef Bernard's smile tightened slightly. We understand tradition, of course, but our readers expect complete recipes. Perhaps we could discuss a compromise. It was Alina who intervened. Anton, some secrets deserve to remain secrets. The mystery is part of what makes Chef Johnson's food so special. The head judge nodded reluctantly. We'll discuss the details later. For now, congratulations again. As the crowd began to disperse, Sophia approached Marcus. Congratulations, she said warmly. You deserved it. Thank you, Marcus replied. Your dishes were amazing too. But they didn't have what yours had, she said thoughtfully. That connection to something deeper, I could taste it even if I couldn't identify it. Marcus smiled. That's the highest compliment you could give me. Will you reopen your restaurant now? She asked. That's the plan, though maybe with some changes. If you ever want a sous chef who trained under Mitchell Laurent, Sophia said with a small smile, let me know. I think I could learn a lot from you. Marcus raised his eyebrows in surprise. Seriously, what about your job in San Francisco? Sophia shrugged. I'm ready for something different, something with more soul. I'll keep that in mind, Marcus said, genuinely touched by the offer. Later that night, as Marcus sat alone in his hotel room, gold medal on the nightstand, he called his mother. I won, Mom. Her shriek of joy made him hold the phone away from his ear. My baby, I knew you could do it. Wait till I tell everyone at church. I used Grandma's spice blend, he told her, in all 3 dishes. There was a moment of silence. She'd be so proud, Marcus, so proud. They want me to share the recipe for the magazine. Another pause. What did you tell them? That I couldn't, that it's family. Good boy, his mother said softly. Some things aren't for everyone to know, they're just for us. Marcus thought about his journey, the failed restaurant, the competition, the recognition he'd finally received. I'm thinking of reopening Roots, he said, with the prize money, but doing it differently this time. How so? No more trying to make the food fancy enough for critics. I'm going to cook our food, tell our stories. If people get it, great. If they don't. He shrugged, though his mother couldn't see it. That's on them. Your grandmother always said, don't shrink yourself to fit in someone else's pot. Marcus laughed. That sounds like her. After hanging up, Marcus opened his notebook and began to sketch ideas for the new Roots. This time, he wouldn't try to adapt his heritage to meet others' expectations. He would present it proudly, authentically, and let the food speak for itself. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the newly renovated space that would once again house Roots. The design was different, more open, with photos of his family prominently displayed on the walls. The menu was printed and ready, featuring dishes that honored his heritage while showcasing his technical skill. Dion was back as sous chef, and surprisingly, Sophia had taken him up on his offer. She had moved from San Francisco to Atlanta 2 months ago and had brought valuable expertise to the kitchen. You ready for this? Dion asked, adjusting his chef's coat. Critics are going to be all over this place after your win. Let them come, Marcus said confidently. The food speaks for itself. The soft opening was for friends and family only. Marcus's mother sat at the best table, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins who had driven up from Charleston. The dining room buzzed with conversation and laughter. As the first courses went out, Marcus watched from the kitchen pass. There it was, his grandmother's spice blend, subtly infused into dishes that honored both his heritage and his training. Not hidden, not disguised, but celebrated. Alina Westfield had requested to attend the opening, and Marcus had agreed. He watched now as she took her first bite, closing her eyes as she had during the competition. When she opened them, she caught his gaze and nodded slightly, a gesture of respect and understanding. In that moment, Marcus knew he had found his path. Not by rejecting his roots or by limiting himself to tradition, but by embracing the fullness of his identity and his heritage. The secret ingredient had never really been the spice blend itself. It was the story it told, the history it carried, the love with which it had been passed down through generations. It was the thing that made his food uniquely his, a legacy of resilience, creativity, and pride that no recipe could fully capture. And that was something worth preserving, worth fighting for, and worth sharing on his own terms. Chef, Sophia called from the line, orders coming in fast. Marcus turned back to his kitchen, to his team, to the work he was born to do. Let's cook, he said with a smile. Subscribe now to at Persifistories for more powerful narratives that explore life's complex moral questions. Our stories dive deep into the human experience, challenging assumptions and celebrating diverse perspectives. What secret ingredients, whether literal or metaphorical, have been passed down in your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join our community of storytellers and truth seekers. Next week, the promotion. When 2 colleagues compete for the same position, an unexpected ethical dilemma forces them to reconsider what success really means.